Welcome back. We're talking to the NATO Secretary General and talking about NATO and the challenges facing the North Atlantic Treaty Organization with the Secretary General, Jaap de Hoop Scheffer, who joins me in New York as the United Nations General Assembly is taking place. Just before the break, so we were talking about Russia, and I want to just get this one email in before we move on to the issue of Afghanistan, which is a key one for NATO. This email came from Harfia in London, in the UK, and says, why is there so much conflict around the borders of the old Soviet Union?
Well, why is there so much conflict? I do not see that much conflict around the borders of the former Soviet Union. I see a problem in Georgia. But if you, for instance, take Ukraine, you can say they have a lot of political turmoil. You can also look at it from the positive side and conclude that this is democracy at work, which did not exist in Ukraine before the Orange Revolution. I mean, political parties, they fight, but as long as they do it in parliament and not in the streets, it's a big plus. I come from the Netherlands, which is a coalition country. I can say there's a lot of fighting going on between different political parties. If I look at Central Asia, extremely important, of course, for energy supply, I see NATO engaging in a partnership with the Central Asian nations. I see China interested in the region. I see Russia interested in the region. I see no direct competition between those three there. So I think if you look at because the email said that the borders of the former Soviet Union, I think that we do not see a host of conflicts there. We see a debate at the moment about a notion which I cannot accept, and that is the notion of the near abroad, that you have spheres of influence, and that's why I mentioned the 19th century, where others should not dare to tread. That I think is obsolete as a notion.
We had an email, and I'm trying to get as many of the viewer questions in as I can, but we had an email from MN Beg in Alberta in Canada, who wrote in saying the use of force to solve conflicts is not working anymore. In the case of Afghanistan, NATO should try to resolve the root cause of the problems, alleviation of poverty and ignorance.
I agree and I disagree. I agree very much with this viewer from Alberta that in Afghanistan, like in other conflicts, there is no military solution. In Afghanistan, it's about reconstruction and about development. Where I disagree is that he or she puts this all on NATO's plate. What NATO is doing in Afghanistan, and NATO has a considerable 50,000 strong force in Afghanistan, NATO is trying to create the conditions, in the military sense, for reconstruction and stability to become possible. That's a huge challenge, as we all know, but NATO, as a political military alliance, is not, of course, responsible and cannot be held responsible for the reconstruction and development of Afghanistan. That is, first of all, in the hands of the Afghan people, President Karzai, the government, the parliament, the people of Afghanistan, the United Nations, the European Union, the G8, and all those international organizations. NATO is an enabler. NATO is about creating conditions, and that is difficult and complex enough. But NATO is not in the reconstruction business, if I may say it a bit colloquially.
We've got a caller on the line from Sudan. Good to hear from Sudan. Ahmed, what would you like to ask?
Hello?
Go ahead, Ahmed. Hi, go on.
Hello, I'm calling from Sudan. I basically am from Kandahar, Afghanistan. I have a question for Mr. Secretary. My question is,
go ahead.
How can NATO stop the anti-bloc? I mean, by anti, I mean the whole bloc which are encouraging terrorism into Afghanistan, procuring weapons and terrorists into Afghanistan. And the second thing is, we are in the people in Afghanistan, Kandahar or South or East, who are where the problem is. People did not see any real change because they are still suffering. They have not seen anything good for them. People are suffering from street crimes
Okay, thanks, Ahmed. Ahmed, let me ask the NATO Secretary General on this. So, our viewer, who's actually from Afghanistan, originally from Kandahar, says, you know, people there are not seeing any real change. How do you measure success then?
I think, first of all, many people do see change, but I can follow the logic that not enough people do see change. I say again, also to this viewer, NATO is doing its very best to create conditions that the average Afghan man and women, family, mother, children, can see a change for the better in their standard of living. That is a huge challenge. And let me add that the international community, I think, has lost a bit the notion of the word patience. Do not forget that the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, and there the man who asked the question will agree with me, the Taliban brought Afghanistan back to the Middle Ages. In 2001, the Taliban were chased out of Afghanistan. We are now writing 2008, that's 7 years. We have seen a lot of development, but you cannot simply bring Afghanistan up to a standard of the 21st century in 7 years. So let's please write patience with the capital P, and let us keep the international community interested in the long term in Afghanistan's future, because Afghanistan was a training ground for terrorists, and it should never become again a training camp for terrorists which create the havoc all over the world. And I can promise you, sir, from Kandahar, that NATO will do its best, although specifically in your region, in Kandahar, the challenges are huge to create those conditions for bettering, improving the living standards.
Maybe a slight odd question, but something that occurred to me is, let's get Alexander in South Africa on the line, because he's been waiting to talk with you. Alexander, go ahead from South Africa.
Good evening, y'all. Good morning. I don't know what's happening now.
Hi, go on.
Yes,
it's okay. What's your question? Ask your question, please, Alexander.
My question is regarding relationship between NATO, United States, and Russia currently.
Go on. Keep going, Alexander.
In my opinion, the problem is that NATO is currently NATO, United Kingdom, and USA is having a problem, and in my opinion, having quite a huge problem by not admitting aggression of Georgia against South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And
Alexander, because we're almost out of time. Alexander, I'm going to cut you off there because we're almost out of time, and I want to get the Secretary General's response. Again, this issue arises. Can you preempt any other similar problems arising, or at least NATO's role in them, perhaps be defined in a way that won't raise this kind of criticism? Do you see any upcoming conflict situations?
I think quite honestly, and there I slightly disagree with what I'm hearing from South Africa. I do not think that NATO inspired or provoked or in any way helped to create this crisis in Georgia. We have seen the occupation and subsequent recognition of two parts of Georgia, Georgian territories of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And I say again, as you said in your introduction, sir, this needs a political solution. And for a political solution, concessions will have to be made by anyone and anybody. But NATO is the last organization you can accuse of creating such a crisis. We haven't done that.
Well, sir, I want to thank you very much. We're out of time, but I'm glad you're able to join us again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for being with us during this week from New York. Join us for the next show as we speak with the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Luis Moreno Ocampo, who says he's considering further allegations presented in the case of genocide against the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. Don't forget, you can join in with your opinions on that. Do hope you'll send us questions to riz@aljazeera.net. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.